live on our Facebook page. You can share that on your Facebook profiles. The final link will come at 10 o'clock in 3-4 minutes.
I'm gonna go live on Facebook now.
So that there's a link that can be created. Okay. Are we live on Facebook?
We will be in a few minutes, a few seconds actually.
I think Rajeev sir is here. Hello, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, sir. So you're coming from the computer screen as well?
Yeah. That's for me to be able to see things better. The telephone is very distinct, so that won't have video or audio. Just for me to look at. Okay. So is this okay? You want me to turn it flat or whatever? No?
So this is fine, but this is in a mobile.
Yeah.
So it's not like a full screen. So if there's camera on the computer, I think this is a little better. Yeah.
Better? Okay. Let's see. Well, what's going on there? No, I'll be looking at the phone, but occasionally at the camera. So at the other thing.
I like your earphones.
Well, I'm an old-fashioned guy. Okay.
Sir, is the mix of English and a little bit Hindi fine, or should we do it just in English? I'm fine with both.
See, I'm substantially an English speaker. I do know Hindi, but
yeah, I'll keep it in English.
Hindi chauvinists find my grammatical mistakes, minimally amusing, to say the least.
I will not let them find mistakes today. Don't worry, sir. We'll keep it in English.
Okay, no worries. Yeah. No, I'm happy to, hear if people are more comfortable in the language. It's just that I'm just saying that I'm not necessarily grammatically correct. That's all. Okay. I've studied Hindi. Okay. 1 second.
Sir, so in case you want to share that on your Facebook, Twitter, can I send you a quick link that you can share?
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was public, other than the announcement. Okay. You want me to do that at this point? I mean, I'm just trying to
I shared that on, I think.
Whatever you, it's a little tricky at this moment, but yeah, you're recording it.
Yeah, it's being recorded, yeah.
Yeah, so why don't we record, clean up, and then put up? Huh?
We
Okay.
can do that. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Can I request others to mute and so that, yeah. Himanshu, shall we begin?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We are ready to go. Hi, sir.
Good morning, Himanshu.
Prakhar, over to you. We are ready to start.
Thank
It's
you.
live on Facebook.
Yeah. So in the screen, I think there'll be Rajeev sir will be there on the screen in the center.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you make that the like setting so that Rajeev sir is there?
Yes. So whoever is speaking will be the center, but it will be the big screen. So you or Rajeev, sir. So whoever is speaking will be
Okay. Thank you so much, Rajeev sir, for joining us. Today is the first Democracy Samvad that we are doing, and we are happy to have you as our inaugural speaker for Democracy Samvad. And the idea of Democracy Samvad is to talk about, for sure, it is about politics, but talk about the leaders' journey, how they came in this, the role and importance of young people to join politics, and also how do we reimagine the politics, and what is your dream of politics. So we'll go into different segments. There are multiple questions that people have asked while they have RSVP'd, and otherwise also they will keep asking questions, so I'll come back to you on that. Maybe we begin with I'll briefly share about what Indian School of Democracy does, and then we can like dive deeper into the conversation today. So Indian School of Democracy's focus is to nurture principal leadership for the grassroots level. So we work with politicians at Sarpanch and Municipal Council level, and the idea is for them to become principal politicians and work over there. So, sir, I think that my first question, and when I was reading about you, prepping for the interview, something which I read was very exciting for me was that you were yourself a student politician and you won election from St. Joseph's College as a vice president over there. So that was an interesting connect that I felt with our audience and your own journey. And then you were in US, you were completely in academia, 16 years. You spent time in Berkeley, Wharton, multiple colleges, and then you made a choice to come back to India. So my question to you is, what made you come back to India? One, I know that you came back and joined I am Bangalore's, but still that transition to leave, I think very few academicians want to leave the US academia, because now I've been exposed to that, and I know the value of that place and how academics is highly valued in US. You made a choice to come back to I am Bangalore. Maybe we can start from there, or yeah.
Well, actually, you got to start at the very beginning, which is where my motivation for all this comes from.
Yeah.
First of all, am I audible, visible, all that clearly? No problem. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I happen to have a somewhat different and unique background. I grew up in a family of freedom fighters. My father was jailed in 1947 as part of the freedom struggle when he was just 15 years old. And his elder brother, M.V. Krishnappa, is my uncle, and my father is M.V. Venkatappa. He had been a major student leader during the Quit India movement and went on to build the dairy movement in Karnataka. What Korean is to Gujarat, my late uncle is to Karnataka. And he was a member of parliament elected to the Lok Sabha for about 6 terms, from 52 to 80. He was unbroken, elected every time. He was a minister, junior minister in Nehru's time, and in Karnataka as well once when he came back. And finally in Charan Singh's ministry. My father was Speaker of the Assembly and Chairman of the Council. So I do actually come from what is often criticized as a dynastic background. Okay, and nowadays when everyone is busy criticizing nepotism in Bollywood and all that, it's better to be very upfront about some of these, background advantages, you might say. But the difference is that, both my uncle and my father came in as, people who are involved in the freedom movement, and the environment at home in which I grew up was all focused on idealism. And so that's why I'm eager to engage with all of you, not just Prakhar and Himakshi, who are setting up an institution in a very idealistic manner, but also every one of the youngsters who come here today. So I'm just saying that I'm sure you also have triggers for idealism. For me, the trigger was listening to stories of the freedom struggle. And, these two people, both my uncle and my dad, were fairly young freedom fighters. And so they were more inclined to be there were, the whole business of evading police arrest. And this is all very, very exciting stories to a little kid and to all of us in the family, as a matter of fact. So I grew up wanting to basically, my idea was, here's my family that's made a difference. How can I grow up and make an impact on the country? And that has always been the guiding principle for whatever I've chosen to do in life. Okay. Now, as I was going through school, I was trying to figure out, so what do I do? These people had politics as an avenue, and interestingly, from the age of until I was 15 years old, my family had never lost an election. Okay, so this is from 1947 to 1978. Okay, that was the situation. So I assumed that once I grew up and I would also go into this world, that winning the election was not going to be the issue. What to do afterwards was going to be the issue, and how to make an impact. And so I decided that I would gain expertise in policy, right? So right from a young age, I chose to have an interest in economics and policy and politics and history and these kinds of more arts fields. But growing up in Bangalore, my family, like every Bangalore family, wanted me to study science. So I did study science until the 12th. In fact, I think topped the state in chemistry and had merit seats in engineering and other colleges, and chose to leave that. And luckily, my parents, who knew my passion, agreed to let me go and do a BA. Now, I did that in St. Joseph's College, and St. Joseph's, like some colleges, like Stephens, for example, is an apolitical student union. It's not affiliated to NSUI or ABVP or anything like that. And so it's more youngsters who go out there and, cultural activities, sports activities, make life better. And of course, like every other student leader, we always wanted to go through the rite of passage of organizing strikes and things like that. So I've done a little bit of that as well. But remember that I have been an elected student leader, but at the same time a gold medalist in Bangalore University. So I've been able to balance the other side of both a little bit of activism with keeping my core agenda of gaining expertise in hand. And that helped me get a scholarship to go abroad. And I had very, very focused goals. This is a very different pre-internet era, right? Where there was only one book in the British Library about American universities. So I had very simple goals. Oh, let me go to the Ivy League. Let me study with a Nobel laureate. And so I just went ahead and accomplished those goals. Yeah, I'm making that sound, I appreciate the musical accompaniment for that, but basically the point is that it was not easy, it was tough. And I request everyone to put their, instruments on mute. Okay, or whoever's host can mute everybody other than unmute me. Okay, so the basic thing is that, when I went to the US, I went with the idea of trying to figure out how to go out there and pick up the expertise, because the US model was actually a very interesting model. You had examples of, if you look at the American cabinet historically, they've often drawn people from outside of politics, right? So Henry Kissinger.
Sorry, sir. Everyone, can you mute yourselves? I'm muted mostly everyone, but I'll disable the option for people to unmute themselves so that sir is not disturbed. Please. And when we open it up for question and answers, you can unmute. Sorry. Yeah. Sir, I'll unmute everyone and then I will unmute everyone and then unmute.
Hmm. I'm not sure how well it's working, but let's see nonetheless. Um, can you hear me? We're okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So basically, I mean, look, one of the first lessons for politicians is, when there is disturbance and heckling, you need to be able to carry on without being disturbed. So this is not a great example, but I'm wearing earphones and the noise was incredible. So anyway, so the basic thing is, the American model of people who gained expertise and then became part of cabinets was an interesting model. You had Henry Kissinger, who was a Harvard professor of politics, and he became the foreign minister, right? Like that. Historically, there have often been economists and other professors who had who were very capable and who were brought in to help guide the country. In India, you have examples like Dr. Manmohan Singh and others, right? So the idea was, okay, let me go get that expertise. And the challenge was that in the US, America has this habit of sort of absorbing you and taking talent from everywhere in the world and harnessing that talent for its own purposes. Okay, so I was able to work at the Wharton School and get a PhD, but ended up working on American issues. Okay, and but it was good. And then I also got to work with domains that were fairly cutting edge in the world of economics, the field of behavioral decision making, experimental economics. Some of the things that were there as part of my PhD thesis, those fields were 10 years later, they got a Nobel Prize in economics. So while in 92, when I graduated with a PhD, they were seen as sort of rebellious explorations, 10 years later, they were recognized as mainstream. Why do I say rebellious? One of the challenges that I found with economics was that it was highly theoretical, and the world of economists is a sort of self-contained world where there are a lot of people wasting their talent, working within models and things like that, which don't have any significant real-world implications. Because my motivation has always been policy and real world, I basically said, how do things actually work? So we looked at models of people and how they behave. We looked at how conflicts are resolved, things like that. And that became the basis for my work. And then I stayed on in America. I did a postdoc at Berkeley. I was a professor at Oklahoma. But once I was promoted and tenured, that entire process of PhD, postdoc, and what's called promotion and tenure really transformed me as a professional. It sort of made the love of knowledge creation something that became a very integral part of everything that I do. Not just creation, knowledge sharing, which is what I'm doing with you all right now. And so suddenly here I was when I finished my what's called tenure and promotion, which essentially is a unique lifetime appointment in the United States with a lot of freedom and security. I said, I'm 37 years old. I came into all this with the intention of going into politics. Here I am settling in America. And coincidentally, I had already been married. My daughter was just born. My son was about 3 years old. And I said, well, if any time is a good time to get back, this is it. I've achieved a certain level of academic achievement, basically, because tenure is sort of universally accepted as an achievement. Everyone says, oh, okay, you've earned that, great. And then I came back to IIM, where they actually were skeptical. They said, you've got tenure there. Are you kidding us that you're resigning and coming back? And I said, yes, I am. And it also helped that my father was Speaker of the Assembly at that time. So it was a good time to come back. And that's what brought me back to IIM. And that's what IIM became, like America, a very congenial home for a politician because there was a lot of freedom and flexibility. Even today, IIM for faculty does not have, you don't have to go there and sign some attendance register. You can, there are so many courses that you minimally have to teach, so much work, so much publications and other things you need to do, so much committee work and other PhD guidance work and various other, institution building activity. But there's a lot of freedom and flexibility to do other things. And what I did was I found ways to balance both the world of politics and the world of IIM. I made it a point to stay outside because it's still, and this is something you must pay attention to when we're talking about idealism, it's still very tricky. You don't want the institution to be affected by your other activities. You don't want to give it a bad name because you're doing something that could be controversial. You know, so it's a very, very tricky balance. Anyway, I thought it wouldn't last very long. By 2004, I'd contest an election, but it took me from 2000 to 2014 to actually break through. So in that sense, IIM was a very good home, and it gave me other platforms to learn and grow. One lesson from all this, I just want to mention, is that for aspiring politicians, you know, what the American experience, the academic track record, the IIM professorship, the chairmanship of public policy there. I was also a director on the RBI Central Board for until I became an MP for 3-4 years. All these gave me a sense of I have achieved something in life on my own. Okay, none of this is as a result of my family, other than the fact that they gave me the initial economic foundation and the values and the support. And it gave me a sense, a track record that gave me some sort of self-esteem. All right. And yesterday was National World Mental Health Day. Okay. We all wrestle with ups and downs and worries about whether we are accomplishing our goals and whether we are worth it. Right. Before politics is a very, very brutal environment. It's a very disappointing and difficult environment. After 6 years of a fairly good performance in the Rajya Sabha, I am jobless today, but I don't have self-esteem problems because I know that I've you know, accomplished something which, even if you know, the world of politics is unkind, I still have something else to say. I have done something constructive. So this is actually a very practical lesson you got to keep in mind, because we all are going to go through a very, very rough journey and challenging journey as politicians. I've taken a long time, Prof. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. I think you have changed the way I've thought how the conversation will go. And one of the questions I thought was I'll bring back to the dynasty and all, but you have answered it so well in the attempting response. And I'm sure because this question would have come so many times to you about the dynasty, and also I think that gives a good perspective to all of us who are pursuing politics or are understanding these things. My one question that comes to me is that how do you balance between in the current context between your own aspiration in politics and the reality of what's happening, because aspirations are always there. So how do you make a fine balance? Like you said in the last sentence that I'm jobless now, and I think at that level, when at 37, I think it's a very rare thing. I don't know, some people would understand American context, but getting a tenured professorship at the age of 37 is a big deal. It's not an easy thing, as much as I have understood the academia in US. So now at 56, maybe 20 years after that, you say that you're jobless, but yeah, high on self-esteem. So how do you balance the two?
Okay, so well, it's because we always have to be entrepreneurial in our mindset, right? We are policy entrepreneurs, we are social entrepreneurs, we are entrepreneurs in a journey to transform, and so obstacles should really come in. So let me just take a step back and tell you about one or two things that are constraints. Okay. I grew up, as I mentioned to you, in a family which was very idealistic, and that idealism continues. So, you know, my father and uncle and the entire family, I mean, my family was actually once extremely powerful in Southeast Karnataka. But basically, the world of politics changed around us, right? It's become much more driven by money and other kinds of agendas. And in that sense, over time, we slowly found ourselves marginalized. And this was a challenge for me as well. So what, and I've, you know, my wife and I are strongly committed to not making compromises on that front, on the financial integrity and, you know, idealism front. Okay, so come what may, we'll deal with it. I might have a much wider canvas to operate on if I were cutting deals and making money and all that sort of thing, which I've chosen not to do. But God has been kind. I've had enough earnings and savings, and whatever little I saved and invested once I came back 20 years ago, thanks to the way real estate has grown, I've whatever little I had invested, it had also grown and given me enough to basically survive. So I'm not there, but it doesn't give me enough to basically go out there and contest an election today, which can cost 20, 30, 40 crores in a parliament seat in Bangalore, right? So it's very, very challenging work. So that's the only major compromise one would have to make, which is at election time, we'd have to go out there with a begging bowl and say, come on, guys, if you want a decent chap, back me. Okay. We'd like to be able to do it in a different way, which is to say that we'd like to do open fundraising like they do in America. But one of the challenges in the Indian system is that the system is designed to cripple clean politicians. Okay, if you check, check with do a search with my name and the phrase "Don't cripple clean politicians" in the Times of India, and you will find an opinion article that I'd written there a long time ago, which essentially says this is the way laws are coming in the way, right? If somebody is spending 50 crores on a parliament election, and you say that I cannot spend more than 70 lakhs legally if I don't want to break the law, and if I can't spend more than 70 lakhs, which is the limit, and that means I can't even raise more than that. Otherwise, you'll wonder what I'm raising it for and how. So basically the system, India has made life very difficult for the honest politician. Okay, the system is geared to, Kejriwal and his team are the only ones who were able to, in recent years, raise significant legal money and manage to even break through. But that's because they got a tremendous amount of free coverage in the media and things like that, which enabled them to, so that's where one needs to be creative, right? One needs to figure out a way to go out there and manage on minimal resources. And so media, social media are possible ways that you can level that playing field.
Just one good thing, sir, over here. Yes, your public page on Wikipedia is one of the rarest page in which there is no section on criticism.
Really?
I've seen so many leaders Wikipedia page as well, but yours one doesn't have a section on criticism or controversies. That's a little rare thing which I felt. Yeah.
Well, let's not speak too soon. But nonetheless, let me do some self-criticism, right? Many times I wonder whether the fact that I have chosen this harder path takes away, the time and commitment, to be able to give whatever full-time devotion to the world of politics, right? My party leadership is also idealistic. And across party lines, there are a lot of idealistic people. They've all come, they've all sort of adjusted to the notion that there will be some guys in politics who will do the fundraising in all sorts of ways. Others will be people who will go out and make a difference. And for me, my party has a line of people, Manmohan Singh, Jairam Ramesh, myself, who have a path because we come in with a certain expertise, right? So if I was not spending time trying to survive, maybe I could spend even more time in the field, making a difference, doing more with all of you, that sort of thing. So you wonder whether this is the best way to go about life. Yeah, but so far I've managed to, even the 6 years in Parliament, stay out of any major conflicts. And I gave a speech in Parliament once about the e-cigarettes ban. And before that, many lobbyists had approached us saying, "Why don't you support our position?" And I said, "Look, I'll listen to you. I'll make my own speech." And then after my speech, somebody called me and said, "Thank you for expressing our views." I said, "Sorry, those were my views," and they were, because I was very much focused on,
Sorry, 1 second. I will need to. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, no, the call came by, and that anyway. So what I'm trying to say is, I said, look, I gave my point of view. So that's it. Okay, and that speech is, you should check it out on the Rajya Sabha TV. The e-cigarettes ban bill. It's an interesting one. Anyway, but that's based on my own knowledge and expertise in the field, where I was saying that e-cigarettes may be a less harmful option for people who are addicted to cigarettes, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
that's the thrust of it. Anyway, so basically, what I'm trying to say is that it's it's a complicated world, but I have tried to break in because I bring this expertise. So even though I've been denied Rajya Sabha renomination for whatever reason, I'm still the chairman of the Congress Party's research department. At the very moment, I am preparing a note on some key issue for some of the top leadership of the party. Okay, so I'm still valued as a person who brings something to the table, which is crucial strength. Okay, but but there's so much more. I wish I'd like Shashi or Jairam been writing a book a year. I haven't even. I've only got a few edited books behind me. Right? Anyway, so but if I have some good young research assistants from all of you, maybe I can get a lot more done. Let me just stop there. Next question, Prakash.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I'll take
Yeah.
one more question and then we'll open it up to some questions which have come, and I think some people are asking questions on the chat also. I think I would just want to quickly listen to your view of the current socio-economic and political scenario of the country where we are. What do you think about it? And my second question is that often we've been hearing about that the opposition is weak. I think that things keeps coming again and again, and you are one of the leader of opposition. So how do you see that part of the question? First, the current scenario, and then opposition is weak. That's been like a lamented all across the media and everywhere. So yeah.
Okay. So the first part is that we are actually in a very, very dangerous situation right now in modern India. And just to give you 2, 3 examples, you had riots in Northeast Delhi. The people who instigated the riots are free. People who have devoted their time to Gandhian activism and building peace and bridges between different communities are being charge sheeted. Okay. Student activists who stood up for their ideals and protested against laws that they consider to be anti-constitutional are being charge sheeted with dubious stories, and those who attacked universities are not traceable. Okay, so this is the kind of situation we find ourselves in. You find the media going after gang rape victims and their and their families rather than going after not that they need to go after, but then, rather than being on the side of the victims, they seem to be on the side of those trying to cover up, right? And so basically, we're in a situation where if you take a wrong step, if you never know what is going to be cooked up against you. The judicial system will happily send an actress to jail for a month for a bailable offense, and the powers that run the powerful media outlets are happy to destroy reputations and careers without batting an eyelid, and the whole country is going, has a tremendous bloodlust to go along with that. So it's a very dangerous time. There is nobody who will stand up against injustice, and those who are very powerful, who are running the show today, running the government today, are able to get away with a tremendous amount which no government in a democracy should be able to get away with, right? Okay, so it's a difficult time. However, those of us who've been in the opposition, I've been entirely for 6 years an opposition MP. I was elected 1 month exactly after Prime Minister Modi was sworn in, and what shall we say? I have been actually a fairly constructive critic. I don't indulge in name calling. I basically focus on facts and and appeal to logic. And the truth of the matter is that in the last election, we tried to provide an alternative vision, including some limited version of a universal basic income. We, have been trying to emphasize democratic values, and none of these have had any traction with the public. That, thanks to partly the media frenzy and partly due to the national security agenda, the Pulwama attack and things like that, have the other issues dominate. But today, when we are criticizing the opposition for being weak, okay, find out whether anyone who wants to contribute to opposition parties, whether they are not hounded by the government, whether people who want to contribute to independent news platforms, whether they're not hounded by the government, whether media is listening and providing opportunities for multiple points of view. I mean, I am also a national spokesperson for my party. You'll rarely see me on TV these days because I'm burned out. I'm sick of being attacked and manipulated, by various anchors. Okay, and it's a highly stressful, pointless exercise because it's all it's just not getting anyone anywhere. And so we're biding our time. Nothing lasts forever, and events change. And I have a deep faith in the innate, innate democratic ethos of the people of India, and I think things will turn around. But if I were to tell you, look, India's economy is in deep trouble, and it was in deep trouble before the COVID lockdown, you will say, what nonsense? That's not true. We've had the chief economic advisor recently said the 10 years of UPA was India's lost decade. If that's the case, if that's the kind of viewpoint that prevails, right? When that was a decade where we did so well compared to where we are today in the last 6 years under this government, right? And then, of course, this whole business of the hatred in media, social media, the divisiveness, all this makes life very, very, very challenging. And Rahul Gandhi has made a statement where he said, look, if we had independent institutions, that includes the judiciary and the police and investigative agencies and the media, then, and the bureaucracy for that matter, I suppose, we would not be in this situation where you have an unlevel playing field and you essentially have an undeclared emergency. Okay, so it's not an easy option being an opposition politician, and many of them are, being hounded in different ways.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I think I would like to open it up to people who have sent one, I think their question as they registered. So if you are present over here and you've asked a question while you were registering, I think first chance would go to you. Vipul, Pranay, Malika, Akash, any one of you wants to ask a question if you're here?
Yeah, sure, I am.
Hi, Vipul. Yeah.
Hi, hi Rajeev sir. Thanks. Great opportunity to be speaking to you in person. What I wanted to ask is, you've raised, private member bills around public funding, and you've spoken about that in the parliament. I wanted to understand what are the most fiercest oppositions to your proposal that you've received both in private and otherwise around the bill and, to its feasibility and implementation.
Okay, so in private, everyone acknowledges that the system is broken. You must remember that there are quite a few idealists still left in parliament, but when they stand up to speak on these kinds of issues, they will go out there and use it as an opportunity to attack my party or something like that. Okay, but when I finished my speech, the government benches also applauded. There was a lot of clapping from even the ministers that were there. That's not an issue. So basically, the problem is that my proposal is a little counterintuitive. I've said get rid of election spending limits and bring in public funding. Why do I say that? I'm saying that all fundraising should be transparent and open. And that this whole business of trying to cap funding expenditures has actually resulted in everything going underground and rewarding the tainted at the expense of the sainted. Right? If you don't want to play with black money, you're screwed in the current system. Right? People understand that, and but they don't want to make a statement in public. But the other thing is that even the proposals of public funding and matching funds from the government to people who raise large numbers of small, small contributions and things like that. People say, look, even that can be manipulated. Somebody can go out there and say, I got money from 100, 200 people, and just put so much in cash and so much, you can even put Aadhaar numbers, whatever else, and claim that you got all this and speak to a bunch of people and say, this is it, okay? But so everything can be manipulated, but at least it won't be a situation like it is today, which freezes the clean politician out of the system, okay? Which concentrates power and money in the hands of a select few, okay, who run parties like, enterprises, private sector enterprises. So that's not what we want. We want to break that. Anyway, I urge you to think about these sorts of options. But if you're planning political careers, remember that you do need to pay attention to this financial side of life. Okay, you need to have enough to survive. You need to have enough to be able to devote a full-time career to politics without having to take care of your family. And if you want to mobilize, organize, even run a social media activity or a team or anything like that, the system does not make it easy for you to operate. It's all geared against, even NGOs. If you raise money, you have to spend that money very quickly. It's not even like you can sustain it for a long period. There are all kinds of rules. Now they've gone after foreign contribution rules. All kinds of limitations are there. So be prepared for, so what I normally urge people is I say go out there, keep your idealism, but be successful. Take care of your basic necessities. And otherwise be like a pracharak, be a full-time, like Modi ji says, once this is all over, he is going to get his jhola and become a fakir. Be prepared for that. Right? If you're not prepared for that, you better go out there and make enough money in a successful career and then come back to politics. Okay. I also mentioned that in another way, which is that sometimes these successful careers can actually lead to political entry and breakthrough. If you go out and become a notable, if you go win a Magsaysay award for your social work, if you become a film or sports star, then you break through the barriers to public acclaim that will allow you to be a more viable candidate. Otherwise, a lot of people will end up becoming people around political candidates who help get an outcome, but may not become political candidates directly themselves.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Sir, at least 4 or 5 questions came around youth in politics. And I think the primary question is that why young people are not being able to come in politics. I'll just club it up. One is that. Second is more around universities and student politics has come to a largely standstill in our country. I think over the last few decades, student politics is not happening in most universities. Everything is becoming apolitical in nature. While that was a thriving ground, if you go back to the independence movement, also students and universities, whatever at that time were, became a very strong point. And Pranay, who's an alumni, has asked, I want to understand why women's participation is low at national and state level in politics, despite 50 to 33% women sarpanch. So, youth.
Okay, you asked
youth,
multiple questions.
One, I think,
Yeah.
youth. Second, student politics, and third, women. Yeah.
Okay. So student politics would be a great, learning ground, right? But what's happening is, how many colleges or even student politicians, even with political parties, actually engage with larger issues, right? And what are those larger issues? Maybe issues with, so you need organizations like yours to actually tap into idealistic people who want to go out there and make a difference. A large number of, a lot of youngsters, and this happens in an environment where countries are growing, prospering economically, people are focused more on their careers. Student politics and everything is a distraction. We are more career oriented and more interested in having a good life. That's fine. Okay. But the basic thing is, when you think about youth, you think about youth as being idealists, as being, motivated by the fire to, combat injustice and things like that, right? And and so those youth, some generations ago, would go into, would take part in agitation. Some would go into the forests and work with people being exploited. Some would take to violence, all sorts of crazy stuff, right? But today, some choose to become, get into journalism or something to expose these kinds of issues. Student politics and activism in campuses don't seem to lend too many platform for something like that. And even those campuses where there are political party affiliated student organizations, they are more focused on browbeating the other side and trying to push an ideological agenda rather than having a healthy debate. It's become fairly ugly. Okay, so a lot of universities prefer to have apolitical, even nominated student representatives rather than elections and engagement with the political world. So it's a reflection on what people think about the outside world of politics, the kind of people who've been involved there, how those things, misuse student idealism or energy. Okay, that's one part. But for youth, there's no reason that you have to wait only for student politics on campus. That's one platform. It gives you a chance to learn and grow and manage things, certain activities in a way that gives you a chance to gain your self-confidence and have a track record, build friends and popularity, whatever else, right? But when it comes to the outside world, people have to look for, fellow kindred souls who are willing to support each other. One of the things that, the 30 odd people who are here are a network that you can count on, when you need additional help or support. Same thing, when I ran a program for women politicians at IIM Bangalore, and I've shared the program with you, we had in between the two parts of that program, we had a field exercise involved. And some of the women who were in the program did not necessarily have a constituency to go back to. And so they went and worked with, one of our participants was a BJP corporator from Bangalore. So some of them went and worked together with her and did some amazing on-ground mobilization, okay, and things like that. So we need to look for platforms and avenues for making an impact. Now, the corporator was there because that was a women reservation seat. She was a very accomplished, young lady. But then last time, when that same corporation seat was opened up to become a general non-reservation seat, even though she had a tremendous track record, the seat was not given to her by her party. It went to some other gentleman. Okay. Anyway, they have not neglected her, but certainly she didn't get a chance to grow and contest against at the next level, at the MLA level or anything. She may well do so. So part of the challenge for women is that a lot of the women who've been in these pathways of reservation-related elections, some chunk of them come from the families of other, politicians who are, because of reservations, supporting their wives, their mothers, their sisters, their daughters as candidates. Okay, but many of them, even from that background, have turned out to be, very capable and have grown to, to significant impact. And it's a pleasure to see someone who was like a quiet housewife becoming a very successful mayor of the city. Okay, I've seen all those sorts of instances. And but at the national level, or at the state or assembly or parliament level, you do need to be, you need to have a tremendous support structure to be able to take care of family and income and resources and everything else. And the support structure to also encourage women to go out and be involved in what is still a male-dominated domain, and where women face the challenge of people speaking loosely about them. Men have certain advantages. They can hang around late at night, drinking together, becoming closer, women are frowned upon if they do anything like that. There are lots of other subtle barriers to women's growth and success. But part of the problem exists with political parties themselves. They need to take a call. The Trinamool and the Biju Janata Dal have started putting, maybe 1/3 of their assembly and parliament candidates as women, and many who have won and done well. So parties also have to step forward. Otherwise, we need the women's reservation bill to pass, okay, which I'm a strong supporter of. Okay.
You're on mute, Prakhar.
Sorry. Lipsa, you want to ask your question yourself, but very precisely.
I'll do that. But there's a lot of background noise also. That's still asking questions.
Quickly.
Hi, sir. Yeah. Hi, sir. Lipsa here. There were two questions that I had. One was an anecdote IMB director had once shared with us about the sense of autonomy we've been able to preserve in the institute because of the fact that center does not fund us. So are there alternate pathways to actually building academic institutions other than this patient public capital approach that we have of building academic institutions? My second question is about the statement that we talked about, that how UPA's years were the lost years for Indian economy. So how do we combat statements like this with better public understanding, and how do we use academic institutions as a base for building that kind of public understanding, because these are deep technical issues on which we are having very popular opinions, and so how do you kind of build that knowledge around it?
Okay, the first one, well, the issue is really about the autonomy of institutions. See, India is again in denial, not just in the world of politics, but in the world of education as well, right? We basically say education should not be commercialized, and we should, keep fees affordable and everything else, etc. And but the truth of the matter is, education is commercialized from the age of 3, and those of us who are here also are people who are lucky enough to go to the right schools because our parents put us there. Okay, and there are hundreds of millions of youngsters who are not getting access because the overall governmental delivery system has not lived up to its expectations. Okay, so one of the things that we need to do is to recognize that we need a large number of institutions, and those institutions should be allowed to raise resources even from the market if need be. Why should a tuition company like Byju's or something be worth $10 billion, but nobody who wants to actually provide education is allowed to raise and be viable enterprises? So you've created a situation where again we are limiting ourselves and our ability to go out there and make a difference. Okay, there are models like say an Ashoka University where nobody owns the institution. A lot of big business people have contributed, and that's why they'll be able to build an institution. But we need 100 or 1,000 such institutions. In the US, the top 200 schools are very good. I can assure you of that. Okay, here how many? 10, 20? Okay, so that's the problem. So we need to rethink what's possible in the world of education as well. Now, the second part about the facts, right? You need the media to play its role as a questioner. As to whenever someone makes a factually incorrect statement, you need to be able to call that out, right? And say this is not true. But we don't do that. And if you were to would you believe that China is in occupation of some portion of our Indian territory? No, you wouldn't believe, because the media doesn't ask that question. The government makes a denial, and that's it. End of story, right? All of us who say something and question that are called anti-national. All right, so that's the kind of situation we find ourselves in, and the environment is highly polarized, and as a result, you end up in a situation where nobody wants to believe the other side. Or if I say that UPA years were much better, I can share with you a document which actually covers the actual facts and figures with this. Then this government is busy trying to fudge the numbers, going back and changing the data and all that. So we're actually living in a very dangerous world because nobody knows what's true anymore. Okay, and if that's the case, when as I said, when dying gang rape victims the death testimony can be questioned. We're living in a very dangerous world. Okay, so we have to find ways to change that discourse, and we keep writing in. I think you see, nobody is also feeling. There are we are having some very difficult times economically. Unemployment rates are very high, but nobody seems to be unhappy as long as you can attack a minority community and say I'm the strongest person because of my religion or something like that. People are happy, right? So that's the situation we find ourselves in. It's not an easy situation. It goes back to that original question about what's the opposition doing. We find ourselves faced with a huge problem where there's some kind of mass indoctrination that's going on. And this is not something that happens for the first time in history. We've seen these things happen in other parts of the world as well. And that is a matter of concern. So let's see, we'll try and figure a way out of this. Before we go on to the next question, Prakat, I do want to mention one thing, and Himakshi. See, in life, there's going to be these kinds of situations where whatever you want to do, you're not going to be able to change things. If they were to arrest me tomorrow, none of us, none of the 35 people who are here is going to stand up and even possibly raise a question mark on that, right? And so we'll languish and something may happen. Luckily, these things haven't happened in a very significant way in India. But for a political career, you need tremendous tenacity and resilience. You need to be able to deal with all this. You need to be able to go to jail like Mandela did for decades and still come out with that fire and with the large heart that allows for reconciliation and forgiveness. And this is not easy. Whatever you do, cultivate that strength, that inner strength. And that, for me, it all sounded very simple because we're talking after I became an MP. When I had a similar discussion with my women leadership students, after what I thought was a very idealistic, powerful speech presentation, they were very disappointed. They said, you with all your advantages cannot succeed, how will we? I said, no, I've never given up. But I can tell you that in 2004, when I was denied a ticket for the toughest seat from Karnataka, which I think I could have won, at a time when, because my dad was speaker and we had a lot of other support structures, when I would have been able to raise resources and make an impact, etc. I was depressed, literally, I think, for a year. And it took a lot of self-examination to be able to climb out of that. And one of the ways I deal with these kinds of setbacks is to be extremely busy and productive in something or the other. So I'm busy doing a lot of work even now, even though technically 6 years after a very good, in my assessment, parliamentary career, having built a new department for my party, I'm, as I said, jobless. Okay, but I'm not going to stop at this. I'm going to look for different ways to make an impact and see what I can do to change things. But the important point is, do not let circumstances get you down. Okay, and that's the thing that you all need to really, really work on. Okay, and as I said, my secret is to stay busy and productive. That keep your mind off negative thoughts and focus on the larger goal of making an impact in life.
Thank you so much, sir. This was very powerful. I think the last 2 minutes that you said, like entire one of the last 2 minutes, I think every word that you said, I think makes a lot of sense for us who want to get into this, all the alumni of Indian School of Democracies and others. We will take one more question. So Meenakshi has asked a question, given the current scenario, how is INC focusing on nurturing principal leaders among women, trans person and men? And second, she has said, share some light on how policies of safeguarding women from any kind of harassment exist in party you represent, within the party. Yeah.
Okay, see, parties are, we have in the Mahila Congress, what's the name? We have a trans person in the Mahila Congress in the overall office bearer category, Apsara Reddy, sorry. And in Karnataka, we recently had Akkai Padamshali, who joined the party as well. So we have been very open to integrating trans persons and giving them leadership positions. with regard to women as well, we have opportunities through the Mahila Congress and through the mainstream party as well. Okay, and if you see, even in our working committee and things like that, we have a few outstanding women as well. Now, the point is, political party, you can't sit there and wait for a political party or any such environment to give you that push. You got to go out there and fight for it. Okay, you got to go there and demand your space. And so for that, yeah, in the larger political world, don't expect anyone to do you any favors. At the most, you create a situation where your attributes are so outstanding, either because of your reputation, your impact, your they look at other features, your money, your caste, your background, all sorts of things they look for, and that make you a better candidate than someone else, right? So you have to be able to fight that fight and not expect any door to be open to you. Okay, all we can do is, as you say, create an environment which prevents exploitation and harassment, and I think we've been able to build on that, internally. We have a lot of, we've had our Congress president is a woman. We have a very strong, tradition of outstanding women in our party. So we are a much more congenial environment.
Thank you so much, sir. I will just take one more question and then we'll wrap it up because it's 2 minutes to 11. Mayur has asked a question. I think he's asked over here also, otherwise also, that if you had the ability to go back in time and be one of the founding father and mothers of the nation, what would you try to change and why? I will add to this one more question. This was my last question that I've kept. What is your dream for politics? How will you reimagine politics? Because that's one thing that ISD believes in, that we have to reimagine, rethink politics and make it as a vocation for seva. So yeah, what is your thought on that?
Yeah, so think about, why would I be here? Because as I said, I want to make a difference to India. That's the bottom line, right? That's the central motivation. And not just to India, but also to every Indian. And so we're living, Amartya Sen has a concept called development as freedom. And there, the concept is that what we achieved in 1947 was just political freedom. We were able to elect our own leaders and run our own country. But freedom in the larger context means a situation where each and every individual can live up to his or her potential, right? And so for that, you need to get rid of negatives which come in the way. Ill health comes in the way of people, including ill mental health, of being fully productive citizens. If people are in poverty, they're unable to go out there and make a difference because they're worried about survival. If they're illiterate, they can't engage with the world of ideas and make an impact. So we need to get rid of these negatives. We need to give people the ability to stand up and with their heads held high to go out and and feel that they are capable of making a difference to society and not being discriminated against. So when you think about that, freedom from poverty, freedom from ill health, freedom from illiteracy, and freedom from discrimination, do we have those freedoms in India? No, we still have a long way to go. So the same freedom movement that motivated me a long time ago continues to motivate me and should motivate others. We need to be part of those freedom movements to create those, make an India free of poverty, illiteracy, discrimination, ill health, and we have a long way to go. So that is the commitment. And then it's up to us to be creative, to be impactful, and to harness our coalitions and whatever we can bring to the table and our idealism to make a real difference to India and to the world for that matter going forward.
Thank you so much, sir. I wanted to share with everyone that Professor Gowda is going to be one of our faculties for the year-long program, and we are so blessed to be guided by him in framing our curriculum and designing. And I still remember, I think the faith that he showed. I don't know, sir, if you remember the coffee that we had at the Columbia Law School, and we had a long conversation around democracy and politics and what can be done, and especially the role of youth. I think I really loved the honesty with which you shared your vulnerable side also, plus also what are the challenges, what is the reality. So thank you so much for joining. I will leave people with a request that to build an institution like Indian School of Democracy, and like sir said, that it needs to be public money for political parties, it needs to be crowd funded. We also believe that we don't want to be funded by few corporates or few powerful people. We want it to be funded by multiple thousands of Indians. And for that, we have launched our mega campaign, Crowdfunding Democracy, wherein we are aiming to raise 1 crore. In the first 8 days, we have been able to raise 10 lakh rupees, all thanks to you all who have supported. So there's a link on this. Go on and contribute. Every penny counts, 500 rupees to 5 lakh, whatever you feel like. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining. And thank you so much, sir. We will reach out to you. We will share more questions that they have in case you want to engage with them. We can do one more dialogue in the coming months. But thank you for joining us today on a Sunday morning. Thank you, everyone who is over here who was watching. Sir, anything you have to say? Yeah.
Nothing. My pleasure. And if people want to stay in touch and work together in some way or the other, please share my email ID.
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you are interested, write to us. We will not write the email ID here. Do the hard work. Write an email to us if you're seriously interested, and then I'll share sir's ID. And yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
sir.